Pulp Crazy. HBO Max's House of the Dragon Season 1 Episode 3 brought back that perfect balance of politicking and action that we witnessed in Episode 1, while notching up the action scenes to a whole new level. I like the idea of the more politics-heavy portions of the episode being set in the King's Wood. That was a nice change of scenery from King's Landing, and I thought it really strengthened the episode. During that portion of the episode that focuses on Viserys and Rhaenyra, there's a few characters that are introduced that will come into play later on. Anyone who gets name dropped, pretty much consider them an important character, even if they're not focusing on them right at the moment. Rhaenyra killing that boar, I thought that was pretty well done. She just kind of unleashed all of her pent-up anger and kind of resentment on that creature. Also very interesting that in the original Game of Thrones TV series and in the Song of Ice and Fire novels, a boar actually kills, or I guess to be more precise, contributes or causes the death of King Robert Baratheon while he's out on a hunt in the King's Wood. And that basically is the catalyst for all later events that occurred in Game of Thrones. I also liked how they used the symbolism of the heart, or otherwise known as stag, during this episode. King Viserys is really into lore, mythology, and seems to want to believe that he's some kind of prophet himself. He seems to have doubt about naming Rhaenyra as his heir when talk of this white stag appearing in the King's Wood during the second birthday celebration of his new son, Prince Aegon. It's kind of hard to tell in the moment if he was relieved or disappointed that it wasn't a white stag but a brown one that was eventually captured and held there for him to kill. But unbeknownst to the king, the white stag that was in the woods that day appeared in front of Rhaenyra and Sir Criston Cole. Signs are an important part in the Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire universe, and are worth paying attention to as a viewer. Now, back to my man Daemon. He is currently waging war in the Stepstones alongside House Valerion against the Crab Prince. Now, it's kind of important to explain where he's actually at and where the Stepstones are, just to kind of give you a broad idea. The world of A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, what have you, is very similar geographically to our world overall. Bring up a map, any Game of Thrones map online, and you'll see that the continents are very similar, with Westeros being north and portions of South America. Essos is akin to Europe, and the further east you go, you're getting into more of what is. However, in the world of Ice and Fire, Westeros and Essos are not that far apart from each other on the map. They're separated by a sea called the Narrow Sea, and in this Narrow Sea are island chains. One of them, the southernmost, is called the Stepstones, which is off the eastern coast of Dorne in Westeros. Now, Dorne, you might consider this Mexico or portions of Brazil, and if that's the case, you could compare the Stepstones to the Falkland Islands of our world. Now, I just want to say here that I think there's a strong possibility that the world of Ice and Fire is Earth at some point in time. It's either set in the distant past, akin to Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age or J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, or it's so far in the future, post-apocalyptic, that everything's reverted back to medieval times and barbarism, similar to Jack Vance's The Dying Earth or Clark Ashton Smith's Zothic stories. Either way, the setting of the Stepstones provides us with an excellent end to this week's episode. The Crab Prince and his allies have taken refuge in the caves on the Stepstones. They're dug in and this neutralizes the dragon fire from House Valerian and Daemon himself. The war is not going well in the Stepstones, and there is dissension in the ranks among House Valerian. After the events that occurred in the Godswood, King Viserys sends a letter to Daemon basically saying, hey, I didn't approve this war, but things aren't going well with you guys right now, so I'm going to send a bunch of ships and a bunch of soldiers to help you win this thing. Daemon responds by punching the king's messenger with the very box that the message scroll was contained in. He then goes to the shore, gets in a rowboat, rows it across to where the Crab King and his men are taking refuge, basically calls them out, goes on a one-man suicide mission. He takes out a ton of people, ton of foot soldiers just by himself without his dragon, until the archers pop out on top of the caves and pin him down basically. But luckily this was just the type of diversion that House Valerian was discussing before Daemon showed up and before the royal messenger showed up. They have his back, they've come across on foot en masse, and they engage the enemy now that they're out of the caves. Not only that, but they also have another dragon in addition to Daemon's. Now in ancient Valeria, House Valerian were not dragon lords. They weren't dragon riders. But with Corlys Valerian marrying Rhaenys Targaryen, that has changed. And in fact, it is Corlys and Rhaenyra's son, Laenor Valerian, that takes to the sky in his dragon, ultimately controlling the high ground and really turning the tide of battle. Daemon sees the Crab Prince retreating into the caves, goes after him himself, and the next thing we know, he comes out of the cave covered in gore, dragging the Crab King's torso behind him. Again, this was an excellent way to end the episode. I love the action scenes, love the swordplay, love the dragon, special effects. You really can't ask for too much more in a House of the Dragon episode here. I thought this was better than number 2 and is right up there with number 1 with a great balance of the court intrigue and action scenes. Pulp Crazy is located at pulpcrazy.com. I'm facebook.com/pulpcrazy, and I'm at Pulp Crazy on Twitter and Instagram.